Well, thank you so much for the invitation. A lot of liberty was given to me. The expectation was to speak about the bigger picture and to speak about the improvement possibilities, the how and the what can be done. And we did not compare notes with Patricia. And what she presented is very much dovetailing with some of the points I would like to make. But let me start with saying that I would like to dedicate this modest talk of mine to Robert Schuman. Robert Schuman and the idea of behind the Schuman Declaration. And what is more important, I will be trying to create a context which is the European coal and steel community. Today, this year is the 64th anniversary. This is a non-anniversary, don't be surprised. 64th year passed since Churchill and Robert Schuman launched the idea of the Schuman Declaration. And this is the 62nd anniversary when the European coal and steel community by the Paris Treaty was created. Why I'm referring to that moment in time and why I'm referring to Robert Schuman, and this is where it is dovetailing with what Patricia was alluding to. Schuman was born in 1886, and in his lifetime, he didn't have to travel. The countries were moving back and forth, France and Germany. Schuman, even before finishing secondary school, truly believed there is a new way to do things between Germany and France. He believed in that before 1914. He believed that all along the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, until after the Second World War, he got to a position becoming the Prime Minister of France and then Foreign Minister, if I'm not wrong, twice, when he could do what he did with Churchill in 1949. And he did as a launch of the European coal and steel community. By the way, a community which preceded by 6 years the Rome Treaty and the European Community, a treaty which practically brought under one roof the war-fighting assets of Germany and France. War-fighting assets. This is what was about coal and steel. And managed to monitor and run those assets in a cooperative security context. And I think this is the continuation of this thread which already Patricia unfolded. And I would like to ask ourselves, really ourselves, to think through 3 issues. How idealistic, naive, on the borderline of politically insane in terms of certain projections we can be. I cannot count the aggregate amount of time this amazing community spent separately or jointly on weapons of mass destruction. It must be around 10,000 person years, but I don't know. But can we be a bit more idealistic and naive in terms of assumptions? And the other question is, can we really embrace the notion of cooperative security versus non-cooperative security, the military security? Not an either-or question, but in terms of the context, in terms of the framework, in terms of everything glued together by the type of approach which, after all those decades, Schuman managed to put through for France and Germany, and it was called the Franco-German reconciliation. Can we project these ideas on a wider scale than Europe, on a wider scale than Latin America, because I see some of the important roots there as well? And can you project it for Asia, for certain parts of Asia, or the Middle East? And the third modest expectation vis-a-vis you, after these two is, can we anticipate, but not just anticipate, but prevent something which was referred to by Patricia, and my description is a major confrontation or a major war. And let me come back to that later. A quick point about the risks ahead of us before we are trying to figure out what do we do and how we do it. I think we have to really get down to the why we are doing it. And on the risk side, I'm carrying my bag with the risk matrix, okay? And the risk matrix is here with me. This is my risk matrix. This is a cube, okay? And based on just this simple cube, there are 27 moving parts in this cube. And if you take A, B, and C vertically, and if you take stockpiles, and if you take science, technology, industry, and safety and security, and then you take the third dimension as state level, sub-state level, and single individual level, you understand that there are 27 moving parts in this risk cube. And our risk cube is more complicated. Probably the risk cube we are facing is 10 times 10 times 10. It's very easy to add to each and every element 3. So 1,000 moving parts, and on the risk, to handle all the risk, you have to be aware that the weakest point is defining the strengths of your tools. This is an element of reality. This is not an element of whether I am pessimistic. I'm pessimistic by genetic traces, but this is a reality. And the problem with this cube, or the bigger cube, is that it's still missing the driver. The driver for the 27 moving parts, or the driver for the 1,000 risk moving parts. And this driver is what I mentioned in the beginning. Are we putting it in the context of cooperative security, like it is the case between France and Germany and in Europe, or are we putting it into something which is not the cooperative security approach, non-cooperative security? And it's not a question of mix. For a long time, I have been believing that, yes, we have to change the mix between how much emphasis we put on the non-cooperative and the cooperative security. I was emphasizing all the time, I'm not as naive as I look like. There will be militaries, and there will be the stronger tools, heavier tools in the toolbox. But I do believe that we have to change the toolbox. We might retain many of the tools which are in the toolbox, but we have to change the toolbox, because the toolbox is the driver behind all these risk elements. And the tools, yes, Patricia is right. All those arrangements are doing a fantastic job. OPCW managed to again, to defend with the support of the international community the validity of the norm, the taboo norm, destroyed nearly 80% of the chemical weapons stockpiles, and IE is doing an important job, and implementation support unit on the BW is doing a heroic job with 3 people. CTBTO, we managed to get 80% of the system, 80% of the universalization. So all these positive things, don't misunderstand it. But because the drivers, which are defining the context, how much the tools can handle the risks, we are lagging all the time behind. With the chemical weapons, we are implementing something which was started in 1899 in the first Hague Conference. With the BW, it's pretty much the same in 1925, or 1972 if I'm more optimistic. And with the nuclear agenda, fissile material, this is from the 1940s. So we are lagging behind in a situation where there are new issues, which are ABC is only beginning of the soup alphabet. We are having F, the fissile material, and E, electronic, just for the sake of the letters. And we are having nanotechnology, and we are getting robotics, and we are getting to the combination of all these elements. So we are not able to cope with this widening gap because the context is not the right context, because the context is not the Schumann context, the context is not the reconciliation context, and in addition to that, there is a fatigue, okay? Let's face it that there is what happened in the financial world before 2008, there is a regulation fatigue. There is a deregulation going on. Let's be frank about that. And this deregulation and this deregulation fatigue is all right until things go wrong. And they went wrong on the financial issues, and they might go wrong again. So what I would like to propose is that we try to be smart on the right thing, to anticipate that yes, there might be a bubble of all bubbles building up, not necessarily in the next 2 years, but there is a cyclical character of major confrontations and major conflagrations. And if we do not get it right in terms of anticipation, if we do not change the context within which we are trying even to use the same tools in the toolbox, and we do not have to throw them away, we will retain them, but we will use in a different way, then what might happen is, under our collective watch, risks are becoming, like in the financial world, becoming part of a recession. A recession for our community is Cuban Missile Crisis, or the second half of the 1980s. This is the equivalent of a recession for this community. And what is the equivalent of the Depression? And there was a lot of talk after 2008 about a potential depression, and still is not over. The major confrontation. So we do not want to go down in history. We would like to go down in history. Let me mention something as a final point, where it was recalled by the CEO of AIG, American International Group, how in the autumn of 2008 in the school, daughter of one of the employees were asked by the school teacher to come forward, and the school teacher said, look, I want you to see that classmate of yours, her father is with AIG. I would like to see ourselves as a collective community responsible for something which will not happen under our watch. Is another example, and this example is from the CTBTO. A colleague of mine, a very good colleague of mine, a friend told me how in the school his daughter explained to the class what her father was doing. And she explained that my father is stopping tsunamis. So the teacher got quite inspired and a bit suspicious. So she asked, so how your father is stopping the tsunamis? And she said, it's very simple like that. He stands there and he stops the tsunami. Potentially there is a tsunami coming. We have to stop the tsunami, and we need a new framework for that. And the framework proposed by the Franco-German reconciliation, my ideas in the Schuman Declaration, encapsulated in the European coal and steel community, is the right path forward. Thank you so much.